Hey guys, Neil here with a exercise on walking bass for guitar. This is something that's I think it's a little bit different. I certainly didn't find it particularly intuitive when I started it, but I was intrigued enough to stick with it and learn some of how to do it. I'm still practicing a lot. It's not a very easy thing to do, but it's great for your guitar playing, and it's this whole thing of independence of trying to build your ability to treat bass lines independently of the chord work. And when you start to do that, your guitar playing kind of starts to head into the realms of solo guitar. And by that I don't mean, screaming lead guitar solos. What I mean by solo guitar is being able to tackle an entire composition on one guitar, the bass, the chords, the melody, and have it all come through. And there are some incredible players out there that do an incredible job of that kind of music. And I certainly remember way back when I first heard that kind of thing being done, I was, swearing blind. I was listening to, 2 or even 3 guitar players. And when I later found out that it was actually done on one guitar, that was pretty mind-blowing, and certainly enough for me to have a think about trying to demystify some of this. So with that said, we shall try and break this down. We break this down as much as we can in some smaller exercises, and see if we can start working towards getting that sound to happen. So yeah, let's give it a go. So to get started, we're going to need 2 chords. Those chords we're going to use are going to be G13 and C9. And in terms of the voicing and what I'm playing here for this G13 shape, I'm using my first finger on the 3rd fret of the low E string, which is the G note. I'm skipping the A string out and I'm going straight to the dominant 7th note with my 2nd finger on the D string. My 3rd finger is then going to play the 4th fret on the G string, and then my little finger is going to play the 5th fret on the B string, and there's the 6th or the 13th. So that's our sort of dominant 7 with the 13 on top. There's our G13. And then for the C9 chord, this is a pretty familiar shape to a lot of you, I'm sure. Same kind of idea. So we're having the dominant 7th sound and then the 9 on top. And in terms of fingerings, my middle finger, 2nd finger, is going to be playing the C note, which is 3rd fret on the A string. Then on the D string, my 1st finger is going to be playing that E note on the 2nd fret. I've then got my 3rd finger playing the 3rd fret on the G string, and my little finger playing that 9th degree on the 3rd fret on the B string, and that gives us a C9. So what we're going to do to start off is just try and get this to be almost to think of it as 2 separate things now, to try not to think too much of it as 2 chord shapes, and more of thinking about the bass part, which is the G and the C. And then what I'm going to do is obviously use my thumb here to play the bass part, and I'm going to use my fingers, 1st, 2nd and 3rd on the 3 chord part of the chord strings. I suppose we'll put it like that. So we'll have bass note and chord. So we'll think of it like that. And the same on the C9. Thumb playing the bass note, the root note C, and then the rest of the chord with those 1st, 2nd, 3rd finger on the picking hand. Obviously, me being left-handed, those hands are going to be different from me to you. Yeah, so there we go. So we'll have G13 to C9 played and picked like that. So what we're going to do, first exercise, I'm going to play G13 and we're going to play, let's do a bar of just quarter notes with the thumb. So we'll play the chord on the 1st note, on the 1st beat. We'll play the thumb on the 1st beat, the 2nd, the 3rd and the 4th beat. So what you'll end up with is this. So that is just starting to help us break these 2 things apart. The second thing you can do to kind of further that that idea, I guess, is to maybe now look at putting the chord maybe on one of the and beats, one of the eighth notes, so you could put it on the and of 1. So you can have 1 and 2, 3, 4. As an example, you can make up whatever one you want to try, but just having something on having the chord played on a different beat to where your thumb's going down will help encourage that separation. So again, that will sound like this: 1 and 2, 3, 4, and then repeat that exercise on the C9. And then put the two together. And then back. Okay, so if all that is going well, the next thing to do is to move from our G13 to our C9, but this time still using a bar's worth of quarter notes on the bass, but we're going to do that classic jazz walk, bluesy jazz walk that you've probably heard a million times before, but you know, it sounds cool and it works well with this, which will have us moving from G, and then rather than kind of follow the kind of the major pattern that leaves us a note short, what we're actually going to do is have a small chromatic section here. So we're going to go from the G to the A, B flat, B, and then arrive at C, and then we're up to C for the C9. Obviously it's a bit of a pain to move up one string, so instead of moving from the G to the A here, we're going to go from the G to the open A. That will positionally make things a little bit easier, and little details like that are really important when you're trying to work on anything that's solo guitar based, or you know, anything where you've got a lot of independence going on. You want things to be as efficient as possible, to move your hand as little as possible, because your fingers are going to have enough to do. So you know, that's a great point in case. There's no point going like that. That's horribly inefficient. It works, but it's not really a great way of doing it. So we're going to do the G13, open A, B flat with the first finger, and then the B with the first finger, and then I'm then going to land with my second finger on the C, and obviously I want my second finger on the C so that the rest of my fingers can form that C9 chord. Again, another thing that you'll find you'll trip over a bunch of times. You'll work out a way to make a move to where you want to get to, and then realise you've tied up the wrong finger and you can't form the rest of the chord. You'll trip over all these things as I did along the way, or maybe you won't, but I did. So yeah, G13, and that's how we get to our C9, and it's got that nice kind of jazzy bluesy walking bass vibe to it now. And then once we're there on that C9, that's the beginning of the next bar. We're going to walk back down towards the G13 again and start again, but this time we're going to go from the C straight to the B flat, to the A, to the A flat, to the G. So we'll have this. One more time. I'm doing the B flat with the first finger, open A, fretting with the second finger, the A flat, so that I can use my first finger on the bass and form the rest of the chord for the G13. So those two things together now. Okay, so we're slowly getting there. The next thing that's probably, well, it's quite an important thing to point out is part of the sound that I'm trying to get here, to get this to sound a little bit more bassy. I'm not using my nail of my thumb on the bass part, so I'm not giving, because that's not really to reminiscent of the kind of sound we're going for here. I would use the side of the thumb, which gives you that kind of softer, warmer, more bass player sounding vibe to it for this style anyway. Which you can hear the difference between the two. If I kind of pick it, you'll get this, and then side of the thumb. You can kind of hear it's a bit more, sounds a little bit more like a bass, and it's a little bit warmer and a bit fatter, and that's all part of the illusion. When you want someone to hear this part you've come up with and think, wow, that sounds like, you know, two people playing at the same time, that is part of the illusion, is paying attention to the detail in the sound as much as it is about the feel of those two parts, and all those things will amalgamate to give you the desired effect. So we've got our walk up there, and the other thing as well is trying to get those bass parts nice and legato, really let those notes ring out for their full value, because again, if you were to go more the staccato-y, that's going to sound really peculiar. So you want to have nice big long bass notes. Again, all part of creating that illusion of how a bass player would approach that, or, you know, how we're trying to sound like a bass player as best we can. So yeah, there we go. So there's our movement again. Now, in terms of the chord, this is where things can get a little more interesting. So there is a whole metric ton of different rhythms that you can choose to utilize in this, and you could go for a real kind of, see, this is where you can go staccato with the chord parts, and you can have real poppy parts. You can try and get it to sound, you know, you might be trying to emulate, for instance, like brass stabs. Just because you're playing it on a guitar doesn't mean you're not trying to make it sound like another instrument or playing the style of another instrument. So you could, for instance, you could have a chord part and the horns are in it are doing, might be that kind of thing. Or legato. Yeah, there's a whole ton of ways to do that. So you know, you need to experiment with that a little bit. Furthering the independence thing, the way I'm muting those off, it's not really, well, it's a combination of both putting my fingers down onto the strings to stop them, and sometimes it's just very lightly relaxing the chord part of your fretting hand to make those stop. So you can have, for instance, you can stop the chord, leave the bass part going, and those things sound like they might be, you know, that doesn't sound too tough, and then you try it and realise that your brain's got a great idea of what your fingers should be doing, and your fingers have other ideas, which is more than often the case. So again, loads of practice, just working on those two parts. You know, whether you're doing something like this or something. And one other tip there was, you can see I changed up the bass there, rather than going down like we did in the exercise. The other thing you could do is come up, upwards towards the G, and using that same kind of chromatic idea, but I'm starting on the open E through F, and then chromatically back up to the G. You know, that's another way to add a little bit of variation to it. So that works well too. And I guess finally, the last thing to think about is probably something that I find myself doing more and more, is this kind of percussive thing. And when it comes to what percussively to do and where to do it, the thing that I end up mostly trying to do to kind of give it a bit of groove and a bit of feel and kind of push it forward a bit, I think I would, in terms of the drum side of things, the 2 and the 4, generally speaking, is where drummers will put the snare drum in a beat, generally speaking. So that is usually where I will look to make a percussive sound. This style of playing, it can be even more tricky to try and then think about something else to put in. But it does, once you start practicing it, it does become surprisingly intuitive to kind of think that's where the beat should go. And what I'm doing, I mean, I'll just play an example. It would sound something like this instead of... I'll add this in. So what I'm doing there, so on beat 2, which will then be the A on the bass string, what I'm actually doing, I'm actually using my thumb, and it's a bass technique, and one that, you know, lots of guitar players steal the idea from bass players because it's a cool thing. If you've ever heard of slap bass, you'll know it's a technique that bass players utilise to. It's a very distinctive and percussive sound. And what's actually happening is they're actually using the side of the thumb, kind of like a hammer, and you're still getting a note. So in this case, this open E, we're still getting that, but if you hit it so that you're hitting it down towards the guitar itself at 90 degrees to the guitar body, so like that, we're actually slapping this back fret here, or the string is slapping and then coming away, and that's what's giving us that kind of click. And bass players use it. That's the kind of, you know, classic slap bass sound that you know, it doesn't always sound great on guitar, but there are techniques from it that work quite well, and from the percussion point of view it works great. There are some people that do great slap guitar. I mean, Gus Rigoven's an excellent example of someone who's mastered that art. I certainly haven't, but that's the basic principle, that's how it's done. And what I'm doing, I'm playing traditionally with the downstroke of the thumb, the G, and then the open A, I'm actually just lightly hammering it to get that click, which is on beat 2, which makes it sound like a snare drum. So we have the, and then the same on the B. So I'm playing the G, slapping the A, and you know, this will take practice, but as gently as you can, because you don't want it to absolutely pop out. You're just trying to get it to fret the note just enough, but get a little bit of a click behind it to sound like it's percussion. So a fine balance, but worth practicing and pursuing. So yeah, the G, slap the A. We're going to play the B flat and then slap the B. So like that. It's actually harder to slow down and explain to you than it is to just play it fast, but that's what's going on. And same on the way back. Play, slap. So play, slap, play, slap, play, slap, play, slap. So you could kind of practice that on its own. I find it easier just to throw it all in and see what happens, give it a go and work at it that way. But that's the overall effect. So there it is. the walking bass on guitar. It's not easy, but it's worth pursuing, and you know, things can go, you know, stratospherically beyond this, where you can start to add in melodies and all kinds of other stuff. But this is a really cool starting point, and I think that kind of as a basic walking exercise is a great place to familiarise yourself with how that all works. There are a whole, I mean, from this point onwards, if you really start getting into that, you can look at, you know, any piece of music you like, and there will be a way for 99% of those pieces of music to break that down in a way where you can play the bass part independently of the rest of the song or the chords. And I, you know, thoroughly encourage you to give that a go. And there's a few out there as well which you can find notation and exercises on. I know one that's been done a few times is I Wish is a really good one. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys, and fingers crossed you're on your way to independent mastery. And I do mean fingers crossed. They will be crossed in all kinds of ways you'd never imagined, trying to get this stuff to work. We'll be doing more of these, lots and lots of different styles, lots of tips, lots of tricks. So please drop us a like, it means a lot to us. And subscribe if you haven't done already. There'll be more on the way very soon. So see you in the next one.